Ay, ay, ay. You'll notice that I'm a little dressy today. Man, so I've been called up for the jury selection for the biggest case on planet Earth right now. And as you can imagine, my whole world is just spinning, spinning, twirling, twirling ever towards freedom. If anybody knows what that's a reference to, twirling, twirling towards freedom, um, leave that in the comments, and I would totally give you a point if you know what that's from. In any case, there's ever so slight a chance that I could get picked. And, at that point, I'd be sequestered and things would get crazy. There's enough Robo David on the internet that we could piece together the rest of the course for you so that David would teach it and somebody else would grade it. So one way or another, you'll be fine. But I wanted to give you guys like a really good heads up that the next couple of days are going to be interesting. And honestly, math is on my side because it is 1,000 to 12. Out of the 1,000 people that they've called up, only 12 are going to make it onto the jury anyway. So it's in any case, it's going to be an interesting experience. So let's talk just for a few minutes. I really don't want to put up a discussion question today because my mind is so just lodged in the muck, and I'm pretty much done with grading. I have a few stragglers I need to catch up with, people who have emailed me stuff. I have gotten a few emails from people who pointed out to me that I missed something, and I've been going back and correcting that. So, please be patient with me if that's the case. I still have some physical papers on my desk that I need to go through. So in any case, what we're moving into now is the final project. And which is funny because we're at the midterm, right? This final project is going to take on several different forms. It's going to have multiple components to it that are going to split. So even though it's the final project, it's going to have a lot of moving pieces. But all I really wanted to do today was kind of give you guys a really interesting history lesson on where this project comes from. It's like the community research project. And this is a kind of a new one that I've put together, but it's based on some stuff I used to be really interested in. And I thought that this would be kind of a fun thing to talk about because looking back on it, I used to be really interested in a theoretical construct that was put out in this. I got this book from a big writing conference. This is Writing and Community Engagement. And this is just a whole bunch of papers that were published around the time. Gosh, when was this? It was about 10 years ago that I got this book. And it's a whole bunch of writing about service learning. Now, you should all thank your lucky stars that service learning never took off for me, because I'm pretty sure if I had gone in the direction of service learning, I would be one of the most hated teachers in this state. It is just an awful system. So in any case, here's what the basic idea was. You, in the teaching of writing, especially, there was this huge push to get students to, my brain is Swiss cheese, and there's a lot of reasons for that. There was a push to get students more engaged with their communities. The thinking was that writing is a communal event. Therefore, if we want to get better writing, we need to have better communities, right? Which kind of sort of weirdly makes sense. So all of this stuff was talking about getting students out into the world, into their communities, and considering them and doing things to kind of participate in the growth of the community. Now, I believe this might be where I first ran into the concept of the eco-narrative, which I always liked the eco-narrative. I always thought that was a fun one. So there were a lot of textbooks that came out at this time about like field writing. Field writing is kind of a version of eco-narrative, and that gave rise to service learning and service engagement. Basically, what you would do would be, in order to complete an assignment, students had to log community service type actions, and they had to go out and engage with either a charity or some type of nonprofit group, and they'd have to write about their experience doing work with that group, right? Now, there's so many essays in here talking about the value of that the writing became very, very detailed, that students invested a lot in it because it is sort of like contributed to their sense of place and their sense of purpose. The problem with service learning, and this was something I learned by doing more research on it online, was the fact that we ended up having a whole bunch of students out in the field who were there and they had to do a service requirement in order to fulfill these writing projects. And all of these nonprofits basically reached out to academia and they were like, stop, don't do this. So they had a rush of volunteers and they had all these students coming out and helping in these nonprofits, but they were absolutely horrible quality volunteers. They were not there for the right reasons. And so they would come in and they would take up space and they wouldn't really work very hard. And they were there just to fulfill the assignment requirement. Now, it's funny too, because I think that this kind of relationship with, community service work, this is a problem that comes about in a lot of different ways. And it's just kind of more apparent when we started forcing students out into the field. Who are the people who mostly do community service? It's people who've gotten in trouble with the law, right? People just don't typically go out and do things for the benefit of the community. They just don't, right? They do it because they've been required to for a variety of reasons, whether it's because a judge has mandated it, whether it's because of some type of stupid assignment in the college system. You just don't find people out doing things like that of their own accord. And in actuality, with these nonprofit agencies that were experiencing this, the volunteers were actually causing more problems than they were solving. It was that bad. And so there was this huge backlash in the service learning scholarship because everybody just collectively looked at it and were like, nah, dog, you shouldn't be doing that. So I think the goals and the idea behind service learning was a noble one, but its execution was just horribly, horribly short-sighted. And I don't even think that this is necessarily a comment on like the attitude of students themselves. No one wants to be required to do something, right? Everything that is required is going to have some type of sink in enthusiasm, which is hilarious because people come to college of their own accord, but as soon as something is an assignment that's required of them, it kind of saps the originality and it just does something to the actual value of the work that you're participating in. It devalues it because it's something that's required as opposed to something that's being contributed by your own volition. So it's not necessarily a comment on the attitudes of students. This is across the board. There's a reason that people do community service because they have to. So in any case, for a long time, I wanted to do a kind of service learning thing, but I realized it's an exceptionally bad idea. So I've still been playing around with this concept, and I realized I think the problem with the service learning idea is the requirement and participation without a solid, good groundwork. And I still think it's a terrible idea to require students to go out and actually contribute volunteerism, because if you're required to volunteer, then it's not volunteering anymore, right? It's something else. So I think rather than, requiring this actual labor, what we should do is promote more an understanding of community. We should kind of encourage people to think about their community in more transformative ways. The eco narrative is the first attempt to do that. And that's why I kind of tried to put a level of research on top of it as well, because the locations we go to in our community are often symbolic about a lot of different things, right? Our history, the stuff that's ongoing, the struggles that we still see to this day, whether we're talking about the historic slave auction houses in Savannah, or we're talking about where very famous crimes were committed. You can fill in the blank with all sorts of stuff there right now. Our location tells us a lot about who we are and the problems that we struggle with. So what I want to tackle with this assignment is Brunswick, Georgia, Darien, Jessup, Waycross, Baxley, Hazelhurst. We live in these places. These are our spaces. This is our environment. And we often have a very kind of surface level relationship with the environment that we're in. And I want us all to stop and really think about our community, what it is, and most importantly, what it needs. Now, I did something like this last year with my English 1101 students. And there really is a lot of fun ways that we can think about this that goes beyond just we need to raise taxes, right? We don't necessarily have to take it in that direction. Let me give you the example they came up with. I had a lot of people working with the idea of the Brunswick Mall. Now, I'm not picking on the mall as an institution. This is a very universal problem within America right now with malls in general. Malls are in decline because the way we buy and sell goods, the way we shop has fundamentally changed. It used to be back in the 80s and in the 90s that malls were places that you would go for an experience of shopping that went beyond simply finding the thing you wanted to buy. It was about going to the mall. It wasn't about buying an album. It wasn't about buying a video game or a shirt or pants or any of the things that you were looking for. It was about being at the mall. You were actually paying a premium on all the goods that you'd be interested in purchasing. Everything you would buy at the mall would be significantly more expensive because you were paying for the privilege of shopping at the mall. Like big example of this that I remember, and this is me dating myself, but it's interesting. I used to be able to buy an album, a compact disc from a band. I'll just say Slipknot because that was me in high school. That album would be $22 at the mall. I could get the same album from somewhere like Kmart or Walmart for $12. So why would I pay more for it to get it from the mall? What was up with that? Why would I do that? Because I wanted to go to the mall. I wanted to go to the arcade. I wanted to go to the food court. I wanted to buy a cookie. I wanted to hang out with my friends at the mall, right? Now, our community, all communities are essentially having an issue right now because the malls have lost their place in our society. And we had a very interesting discussion about the disappearing stores and the kind of weird, depressing nature of malls now. So, like, we had this very interesting conversation about how could we save or how could we improve our mall, and should we? So the reason I'm bringing this up is because when we have conversations about our community, there are a lot of interesting places that we can talk about, and there are a lot of interesting needs that go beyond those very cliched things. And the discussion about the mall came from the experience, and you can tell that this was definitely a high school class, the needs of teenagers. Now, teenagers are typically a neglected class, mainly because venues of entertainment, almost all big venues of entertainment, lose an income source when they're catering to young adults and teenagers. They can't sell them alcohol, right? And so there's a huge disincentive at the very outset of catering to teenagers because you can't make one of the biggest money makers in the entertainment sphere. So we had a really nice conversation about the needs of a particular population. Teenagers often are overlooked and they don't have things to do. And that leads to some serious problems in your community. I always tell people on Halloween, if I get teenagers at my door to trick or treat, I give them candy and I'm very happy to see them. Ooh, look at the scary boogans, right? I cut up with them. Might even give them extra candy. You know why? Because I'd much rather them be trick-or-treating than getting up to any manner of nonsense they'd be getting up to if people are giving them a hard time about trick-or-treating. Yes, hold on to your youth for a little bit longer. Like, that's perfectly fine. Have an extra Butterfinger. I'm happy to see them, right? I tell people this because, like, I'm not going to say I sympathize with them, but I do understand this kind of weird plight. I mean, no wonder they throw eggs at people on Halloween. What the hell else are they going to do? So all I want you guys to do right now, and I'm not going to do a discussion question today because I want you to kind of ruminate on this. I've talked a little bit about the needs of a population. Let's start thinking about our community. Let's start thinking about the city that we live in, the problems that we see. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be problems. Maybe things you want to point out that are good that are happening in your community. Just meditate on this for a little bit. And when we come back, we'll do something a little more constructive with it. I'm going to wrap this up here, and hopefully I won't have to disappear for a while. So in any case, I think this could be a fun assignment, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity for writing, a lot of opportunity for research, but I will not require you to volunteer because basically, let's face it, I don't want to send you guys out direct chaos on the world like teenagers on Halloween. Thank you guys. We'll hopefully continue this on Wednesday. It was fun.